Hi, Ray Poynter here, and this is the first webinar in a three-part series. If you're watching this live, you are already registered for the next two, so you should get a reminder as we approach it. And in each of the webinars, I'm going to cover 5 tips for using AI. And for webinars 2 and 3, I'm quite keen to hear from you the sort of tips you'd like me to include, but I've picked all of today's. So let me show you what we have. First of all, I'd like to thank my sponsors. They all make this all possible, so big shout out to them. And here are the 5 tips. We're going to be using AI to create better prompts. We're going to talk about pasting images and screenshots into AI. We're going to be looking at using 2 models to cut down on hallucination risks when you do analysis. We're going to talk about using AI from inside your regular programs like Word and PowerPoint, and also how you can schedule prompts. But before we get started, I'm going to give you tip 0. You really do need to check your configuration. What are your security settings? Are you sharing any information with the AI provider? Memory, is it turned on or turned off? Memory can be really useful. So it can remember what you did last time, build up your preferences and these sorts of things. But also, if you've done a project for one client and then you do a project for another client, it might learn from that as well. So you want to be aware of what you've got turned on in terms of memory. And what connections have you enabled? Can the AI read the files on your systems? Can it read them on your Google Drive? Can it read them in your SharePoint? All of these sorts of questions. Make sure you know what is turned on, what is enabled. One key tip really is that if you're using AI seriously, if you're using it for work, it should be a paid account. The free models tend to be slower, and they're often considerably less secure. So that is the 2 big reasons for using a paid account. So let's get started with the first prompt. Using AI to help you create better prompts, or prompt engineering we call it. And I'm going to recommend that you use the RACE system. That is role. How do you want the AI to behave? Action. What is it that you want the AI to do? Context. What does it need to know to be able to do this for you? And your expectations. What does a good answer look like? So let's look at this in action. So I maybe have a data file. I'm going to look at this data file in 2 or 3 of the different examples. It's a synthetic data file based around hotel satisfaction data. And I could type in, please review this data file and describe its contents. And I would get quite a bit of useful information, but it would be limited. So instead, I will tend to write something like this. Write a RACE prompt to take an uploaded data file and produce a useful summary. But first, ask me 3 questions that will help you write a better prompt. So I'm going to run this in Claude. I could run it in Copilot, I could run it in Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini, and it would be broadly similar. So that prompt I just spelled out, I paste that in, and it then asks me 3 questions. So what kind of data file will I be handling? And I picked the survey quant data file option. Or I could have typed in my own description on the bottom line. Who is the summary mainly for? And I've picked internal research team. It could have been for clients. It could have been for my own personal use, or I could describe them with that bottom option. And what should the summary prioritize? And for this run, I've chosen key stats tables numbers. It suggests I might be interested in story narrative. I might want short executive bullets. I might want action points, next steps, or something else. Now, because it's generative AI, the next time I run this, I will get a different set of 3 questions, but they are going to behave in broadly the same way. So it then generates the race prompt, which is all that text on the left-hand side of the screen, which you can't read. It's too small. So I'm going to show it you one piece at a time. So first of all, role. You're a senior quantitative research analyst. You're fluent in survey methodology, weighting, base sizes, significance testing, and cross-tabulation. You read raw data files accurately and you never invent figures. Every number you report is traceable to the data provided. So it sets a context. Now, we never just create the prompt and paste it in. You always look at it because this is your chance to say, is this going to do what I want it to do? And yeah, for that role, I don't have a problem. If we look at the actions now, it says you're going to read the attached survey file, produce a structured summary, work in this order. So I'm really going to pay attention because I might change my mind quite a bit on what it is suggesting. Profile the data set in terms of number of respondents, number of variables, weighting variables. Then it wants to flag data quality issues, missing data, and so on. Then summarize the key metrics for each substantive variable. Then identify standout numbers, highest and lowest values. And then list the cross breaks worth running next. So it's not going to do the next step. It's going to stop there. That's probably not a bad place. I might flesh it out, or I might ask it to ask me questions once it's finished those actions. The context. The audience is an internal research team, so technical language is welcome. Now, I might look at that and go, oh, no, that's not what I want, in which case I'll edit it. Assume they want speed and accuracy over polish. So if I pick the end client, this would look very different, but again, we still might edit it. Then the expectations. It's suggesting 3 to 5 lines covering the base size field structure, a short table of issues found around data quality, some key figures, and then suggestions for the next steps we're going to take. Again, it's now much easier than thinking about this from scratch, just to make a few tweaks. And then it's come up with some rules as well, which are not strictly part of race, but are quite useful in this context. So quote exact figures with their base size, round percentages to whole numbers, and means to 1 decimal place, unless precision matters. Where you're uncertain, say so, explain why. Keep the prose minimal, tables and findings, not paragraphs. End with a check before you trust this line, naming the 1 or 2 assumptions a reader should verify. And then it highlights some other things it could do before we get going. So I upload this data file. This is a synthetic data file. I use it for a lot of my testing because I know what's in the file and what it's going to produce. Then I will paste in this race prompt with any tweaks I've made to it, set it running, and it comes back with the analysis. It comes back with a description that there's 1,000 rows, 15 columns, no missing data. It's got 15 columns, 1 ID, 4 single code categories, an NPS scale, 7 1 to 5 rating scales, 2 open ends. And it works its way through. Then it goes through and analyzes the qualitative data. And this is like several pages. I'm not going to show you all of that. This is what I would encourage you to try yourself. Can I enable subtitles? I'm just going to have a quick look. This is a question we have got. I don't think that I have that on this Zoom license. I think that is a different license. So apologies for that. Now, we can expand this race approach. So maybe when you run it, it doesn't quite give you the depth of summary. You wanted more about the problems, or you wanted more information. So you can tell the LLM, here is the prompt that I used. The output you gave me was insufficient because it didn't do this, this, and this. Please create a new prompt for me. Other uses, so this is data analysis, but you can use it for reviewing documents, reports. Maybe you're interested in the new grit study, for example. You could ask it to create a race prompt to give you the right sort of summary of that document, or the new documents from the European Union on the nature of digital research. Turning requests into responses. So you get sent a request from a client to do a study. You can create a race prompt that's going to help you creating the right response, which should probably be a set of questions in the first place. Creating research designs. You can upload some background information. You can tell it what sort of prompt, create a race prompt, and then work your way through. Conducting analyses, as we've just seen, and checking the results and presentations. You can get it to check and verify results, check and verify presentations as you do that. So I can see we're getting some questions. We're going to take them all at the end. So the second tip, pasting images and screenshots. So you can ask AI how to run a program. Say you want to run MailChimp, or you want to run Canva, or something like this. It's really common to use AI to help you, but text descriptions only take you so far. So let's assume that I wanted to check the connections. Remember, tip 0 said, check your connections was one of the things you need to do as part of the security check. And I want to see which ones I've enabled for my ChatGPT account. So I take a screenshot of my ChatGPT account and I simply paste that. I don't have to save it to my hard disk and upload it. I can paste it straight into all of the leading LLMs and then type in a question. I want to check the connections in my ChatGPT account. Where should I start? Here is a screenshot of my home page. It looks at that and it comes up with two alternatives, the fast route or the admin route. I'm going to take the fast route. And it says, click on the apps, the 4 square grid icon sitting right between library and agents. This will open the app directory. At the top of that screen, click the enabled tab. So I do that. I click the agent symbol. It opens up and it brings me here. And where is the enabled tab? Your research-wise chats aren't used to improve our models, it reminds us, which is always nice. So I've gone to Gemini to ask me where is the enabled tab. Good catch. It's actually updated the interface, so there isn't an explicit enabled tab. Instead, look directly at the app icon listed under For Research-wise tab. Your active connections are designated through, and it runs through like this. So we can use cut and paste for all sorts of things to help us through software. You can even use it for real devices. If you're trying to work out how to put the new ink into your printer, take a photograph on your phone and ask it that way. Building something with IKEA, take a photograph, ask it. It's a good chance it will be able to work it out for you. You really like an interface and you would like to build something similar? Generate an output and ask it how you would go around creating this sort of interface. All of these sort of features are going to make things easier for you. 2 models to verify analyses. Why do I do this? Well, it reduces the risk of hallucinations. And ideally, we're going to use two completely different models. So I'll use Gemini and ChatGPT, or I'll use Copilot and Claude. If you've only got access to one model, then you could use two instances, two browser windows, run them separately. But when we're checking our models, we need to be careful about the difference between deterministic statistics and iterative, non-determinative statistics. If I ask an AI, what is 2 times 5? That's deterministic. It should say 10. If, on the other hand, I ask it to do a cluster analysis, it might give me a different solution every time I run it because it's not deterministic. So when I come to compare two solutions, it's very easy if it's deterministic. They should both give me the same answer. If I'm trying to compare something non-deterministic, I need to be a bit more careful. So using Python, this is important. If you want the maths to work with any of the leading LLMs, you want it to use Python under the hood. And one of the best ways to get it to use Python under the hood is in your command, say, using Python. Now, in the real world, this would be a race prompt, not a short prompt like this, but that makes it very hard for me to demonstrate. So I'm using a short prompt to make it easy. Using Python, create a table showing gender as the columns plus total. In the rows, show the average satisfaction for the different attributes in the study to 1 decimal place. So it does that, and that looks great, but is it right? I could now do the same sums in Excel or in Displayer, but that kind of defeats the whole point and takes longer. So what I'm going to do is go to Gemini, and I'm going to upload the same data file, and I've copied this analysis. So I've got a different instance of Gemini, separate browser window, could even be a separate browser. I've uploaded the data in this separate window. I've pasted in the results, and they look pretty ugly, but luckily Gemini doesn't care. And I've said, here is an analysis I conducted on this data. Please check it is correct. And it goes through and it says, your analysis is 100% correct. Every single figure in your table matches the exact data set averages when rounded to 1 decimal place. Because remember, the results I pasted in were to 1 decimal place. It's not like putting in an Excel file where you've hidden some of the decimal places. They had been changed. So it's checked that, it's verified it. So that's a very simple example with deterministic data. Now it looks more complex. So I'm going to go to Copilot. I've uploaded the data file, and I'm going to tell it to, using this hotel satisfaction data, conduct a cluster analysis, use Python for your analysis, state all your assumptions and methods. So this is not a deterministic process. I can't simply run the same instruction on another LLM and expect to get an identical answer. So it runs through and it comes back and it says that there are two very distinct clusters. There are satisfied customers and there are dissatisfied customers based on the silhouette score. So I copy all of the results and all of the methods, and I go to ChatGPT. I upload the data file again, and I say, here is an analysis of this data. Please check the data and report any concerns or errors. And then I paste in those results. And it comes back, I'll read it because it may not be super big on your screen. Headline numbers are broadly reproduced, but I've already found one important terminology error. The reported NPS values are actually mean likelihood to recommend scores, not NPS. True NPS needs promoter minus detractor percentages. I've checked the uploaded data directly. The main numbers in the analysis are mostly reproducible, but there are several important concerns, especially around interpretation. And then it goes through all the things that it checks out, and it checks the silhouette, and it finds, yes, indeed, there are 2 clusters in there. And it goes through and reports back. Most things are good. So that's given us a warm feeling that it's broadly a usable solution. So we copy this result. We go back to Copilot where we did the analysis. Here is a review of the clustering. Please review and update your analysis. And it then goes through and it does that, and it comes back with, our review is excellent. I agree with almost all of it. In fact, it substantially improves it. So we run through and we see what else it's saying, the executive summary, and we can go back one more time to another instance and to say, okay, here is a revised analysis. Here is the raw data file. What are the concerns? And this is where something like a race prompt actually comes into play, because we want to know that all of the numbers that are calculated have been calculated correctly, but we don't want it to tell us whether the solution is the same. So we wouldn't expect the number of people in each cluster to be the same when it was being checked, but we would expect the numbers as allocated to be correct. So we might take the cluster membership from the Copilot and file and include that in the information we gave to ChatGPT to do the verification. That's how we get a lot more confidence that we're spotting hallucinations, we're spotting arithmetic errors as we work through. Tip number 4, using AI inside regular programs like Word and PowerPoint. And this is, I'm going to show you a couple of fairly simple examples, but you can take it way, way further than this. So whenever you're using Office 365, think about Copilot or Claude. Whenever you're using Google Docs or Sheets, think about Gemini. So this was creating this actual presentation you're looking at. And for the 5 tips, I originally had 7 ideas. This is one of the ways that I tend to work. Generate 7 ideas and then cut them back to the 5 that seem most appropriate. And when I'm in PowerPoint on my computer, I have that Copilot icon on the right-hand side. So I click on that and I tell it, okay, look at my tips on this page and create 1 slide for each tip. Use tip N, tip as the title for this slide. So rather than make the 7 slides and copy the titles into them, I can just type that into Copilot. It tells me what it's going to do, and then it generates the slides for me. And this applies for an incredibly wide range of things. I can ask it to include a chart or a table based on some of the data. I can ask it to create an image based on the text on the page in Copilot while I'm working on the file, not going across to an LLM to do it, but I can just stay in Copilot and do that. Here is a classic, which happens to me a lot. I'm sure it happens to some of you. I get sent a document and it looks like it's been formatted, but it hasn't. Everything is in the normal font, and they have manually made the title bigger and put it in bold. And they have manually put the headings in bold rather than using title style, heading style. So there's very little you can do with the automated tools. So one of the first things I will do when that happens is I click on the Copilot icon and I say, convert this document so it's in Aptos, which is my preferred font, and it uses proper styling such as title, heading 1, heading 2, etc. And it goes away and does that, and it tells me when it's done that, and I can click on the done. And then just to make sure it has worked, I click on that heading row there. This is why participation matters. Look at the style, and yeah, it is now in the heading font. So it's gone through and it's tidied up the whole document for me and put it in a regular sort of font. Or if I don't have Copilot, but I do have Claude, then there's a Claude add-in for the Office 365 programs. So I go to the add-ins in Word. I go to the top one, which is Claude for Microsoft 365, and I add that in. Now I can do the same instruction. I go to Claude, which is now in my set of tools on the ribbon, convert this document so it's in Aptos, it uses proper styling, etc. And it will go away and do that. I check it again, and I've clicked on the title this time, and yeah, it's in title font. So you don't have to do those sorts of tidies up. If you want to add a table of contents, if you want to add an appendix, if you want to go through and make a table of the references at the end, all of those sorts of things it can do. You can ask it to change it from present tense to past tense, for example, if that suddenly became more appropriate. You don't have to take the document and put it somewhere else. You can do it with Copilot. You can do it with Claude while you're in the file. What happens if you don't have Copilot or Claude? Well, one option is you can upload it into the web interface. It's not as convenient. And then ask AI to describe how to get exactly what you want, because it's not always super intuitive. There is another add-in called GPT for Excel Word. It's not free, but it's not super expensive either. And that is an add-in. It behaves a bit like the Claude add-in, and you can choose which model to run, but you're paying for model access when you do that. So here is an example of the data file that I was working with. I can go to ChatGPT. I've uploaded this file. It's called badly formatted Word file. And I ask it to do that same conversion that we looked at before. Then I export it and we get, yes, that is now the subtitle, the bit, data 19th June, author Ray Poynter. Or I could upload it into Gemini, ask it to do the conversion, export this file. When I export it, it's got it now in Gemini, and it wants to run that command in Gemini. So we'll run the command in Gemini. We can see it as track changes. We accept all the Gemini suggestions. And we now check, and this is in Google Docs, and it says, yes, that's in heading 1. And we can then save our Google Docs as a Word file. So this is the add-in that we're looking for. This time it's GPT for Word and Excel. And if we do that, it gives us quite a range of models. And it gives us a clue as to which ones are expensive. So Claude 4.6 Sonnet has got $2 next to it, whereas GPT 5.4 Nano has just got $1 next to it. So it's got Sonar. So that will enable you to do something similar inside the environment. Okay, the fifth and final prompt, scheduling. Setting things up so they run repeatedly. For example, every day, every week, every month. So there's really easy options for Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT. This time Claude is the weaker one. You can use Claude Code or Claude Cowork, but you can't just use regular Claude in an easy way at the moment. So I'm in Copilot. I type in a prompt, check the internet for the last 7 days to find stories relating to the use of AI for qualitative research. Assess the main stories and summarize the 3 topics of interest. Again, for real, and I do this a lot, I would use a race type prompt here. So I've got a really complicated prompt. to make it fit on the screen and be simple, we've got this nice straightforward one here. I have quite a lot of these scheduled prompts running because I want to know what is going on, and I use the prompts to do various searches for me. I run it and it comes back with the 3 stories it's going to recommend. It's got the links to the 3 stories. I now put my mouse over that clock. And when I put there, it pops up the word schedule this prompt. So I click on that and it brings up the scheduler. And I could now run this every day, every week. I could run it every Wednesday. I could run it every month. I can decide what time of day it runs. I can decide when it runs until. And I can decide whether or not I'm going to get an email to the section. And I'll click save, and it will do that for me. In Gemini, it's slightly different. You actually just type in to the regular interface that it's going to be a scheduled thing. So every Monday morning at 9 a.m., check the internet for the last 7 days to find the stories, blah, blah. And I would put that in. And it then gives me the option to edit that. It's now a scheduled event. So this is going to happen every week, 9 o'clock on a Monday. We could go in there, we could edit that, so we could change it, the day, we could change how often, we could change the time, we could also change the name, and we can tweak the instructions. If we're in ChatGPT, we can click on scheduled on the left-hand side. And it's a bit like Gemini. And we would type in what the prompt is going to be. And we put before the basic prompt every such and such a day at such and such a time. And then that will go away and that will run that for us. That's then going to be in the scheduled area. We can go in and we can edit it. So we can change the frequency, the days of the week, the time, how long is it going to run until, all of these sorts of characteristics, we can edit the prompt. So once we've scheduled them, we can then tweak them. So we're going to get them better and better. So examples of things that I use them for. I use them to gather information. I use ones that are connected to my email, so it's pretty straightforward with Gemini to look at my Gmail. It's pretty straightforward with ChatGPT actually to look at my Outlook because I've got a connection working. Very straightforward with Copilot 2. So I can ask it to read on Friday all the messages from the week and say what tasks look like they've not been done. I can also ask it to read my calendar and say, just do me a summary of the meetings I've got next week. We can set up reminders for tasks. So we can put something in there that's going to create, okay, you've got your monthly scheduling meeting coming up. Here is a summary of all the emails that relate to that project. And so you can have that ready for your meeting. You can also get it to ask you on a particular day for types of information. So you might get it to ask you for a summary of what you did today in order to make creating your timesheet a bit easier. So that's the 5 tips. I hope you found them useful. We're going to go to Q and Ray now. Thanks to Emma, who devised that title many years ago. And I've got to be looking at my top screen when I see them, so I will probably look a little bit strange because that's where they are. If I bring them on the bottom screen, they will create black splodges. How well do the LLMs do with numbers and maths? I was under the impression that they were not good at that. Initially, they were terrible. They couldn't even do multiplication, long multiplication. 2 12-digit numbers multiplied together, they would get it wrong. And the reason for that is that they're language models. The solution was because they were language models, they can write code, nearly always Python code. So if they try to solve your problem without writing code, there's a good chance they'll make a mistake. That's why I frequently say use Python, or I will look at the code that it's generated, ask it to show me the code. When you do that, it's extremely good with numbers. Next one in the Q&A, does the scheduling capacity work with open systems mail solutions such as Thunderbird or Zimbra? You would need to find out if you can connect to the system. So if there are connectors or if there is MCP, then it would be able to do it. Failing that, one of the things that we will look at in one of the next two is a thing called codecs. You can put codecs on your computer and give it access to files like Thunderbird or Zimbra, and it would probably be able to do it. But start off by asking that as a question. I want to be able to schedule checking my emails, and they're in Thunderbirds. How would I do that? Oh, yes, really good point here. When I've asked LLM to update a long prompt, it sometimes makes changes to pieces I didn't ask it to change. Do you have any thoughts on how to prevent it, or do you ask it to change small pieces? If I'm in an environment where I've got it as an artifact, then I will do it online. But actually, I normally take that out to Word and I will upload the tweak version, partly because I'm often going to want to store that race for another time as well. But I will take it down, and so I will make those small changes. I won't normally just say, make this change to number 4, number 5, whatever. It just seems to work a bit better for me. So any recommendations for the best models to try for summarization of long documents, comparing information from multiple documents, etc., writing stories, working on some story creation from some of the research reports in the archives of market and social research? It's not so much about the model as it's about the context window. The context window has to be big enough. So you need to look at how big these files are in terms of tokens, and then how big the context window is. And if it's too big, you need to chunk the work up. So you would take up a chunk of those files at a time and ask it to summarize them, and then save that summary, then take another chunk of files, get it to work on those. There's a thing called the goldfish bowl problem, which is, if you imagine you take part of the ocean and you put it in the goldfish bowl, that's the context memory, and it will do a great job of analyzing what's in the goldfish bowl, but it won't tell you about the rest of it. So the key number is the context window. When we started, the context window was, I think, something like 4,096 tokens. It went slowly up. It's now a million and a half tokens for many of the models. And you can find the latest summary of token size online. What is your assessment of apps like DisplayerR, where you can do many of the tasks you showed at the beginning? This is a really open question at the moment with things like Displayer and some of the other qualitative tools as well as quantitative tools. Is it better to use a general purpose AI tool, or is it better to use AI inside Displayer or Coloop or one of these? If you are a Displayer user, you're almost certainly going to find it better to use the AI tools inside Displayer. If you're not a Displayer user, then I think it's a much more interesting discussion that we can have with them about where is the best way to go. But there are some really good tools in Displayer. So, okay, I have been looking exclusive in the Q&A, so I'll move across. So has Notebook LM progressed in recent past? So we'll probably cover Notebook LM in another tip, but here is a strong tip. You should use Notebook LM in the mix. Even if you're just using a free version of it to practice and to get a sense of it. Yes, Notebook LM keeps improving. It's getting better at reading materials. One of the great things about Notebook LM is what we call grounded. It looks at the information you upload. It doesn't interpret it with the rest of the stuff on the internet. You can get it to make videos. You can get it to make audios. Don't just ask it to make those audios that you heard a couple of years ago, which was two people talking about it. Tell it which type of audio. There's I think about 4 different types now, and they have different specifications, and you can type in what in particular you're asking it to look for. Getting it to help you with a variety of things is a great idea with Notebook LM. Any suggestions for the optimal formatting of research outputs, Excel data files, PDF reports, for optimal Claude ingestion? We need to put these into Markdown for ChatGPT, but tend to see it make errors in Markdowns, particularly for PDF reports that have embedded charts. I generally do not find you need to put it into Markdown. I find that ingesting most of the files works a lot better these days. So I would try the raw files. PowerPoint is a flaky file structure. So a lot of the programs do struggle. So sometimes I will upload a presentation as a PDF because it gets around some of the problems. I find that occasionally when I'm uploading a PowerPoint file, it actually gets what's on which slide wrong, and it will tell me that something is, an image is overlaying the text when it isn't. And in those cases, I would be uploading a PDF. Okay, so here is the killer question. Have you been successful in generating high quality charts so that you don't have to generate them in PowerPoint or similar program? Absolutely not. You can generate really nice looking charts. Claude Design has got some good features. DeepSeek is getting a lot of people shouting about how good it is, but they tend to be images, not charts which you can then edit. So what I have tended to do as my workaround either is to get it to generate a chart, but then when I export it, ask it to export the data table and the chart, so I remake it in, say, PowerPoint, or I will ask it to create it in Excel and download it in Excel, because then it will be an editable object and I can move it back into PowerPoint. I think that the basic issue is some of the flakiness around the format. So does Gamma work well? Gamma is a really interesting tool. It's artificial intelligence. It produces presentations for you. It can do other tasks as well, which you can put in a report and it will create a nice set of slides. It can create charts. You can put in data tables and it will create those as well. However, it doesn't always create the presentation you want. It's not as malleable. If you're really looking to experiment, then you might want to use Claude or ChatGPT and link it to Canva so it can drive Canva directly. That is going to be a little bit more direct in terms of how you control your outputs. And obviously with Canva, you can get massively high quality charts, images, and so on. Okay, we seem to have hit most of the questions, which is gratifying. So just to say, we've got 2 more episodes coming up. one on the 22nd of September and one on the 17th of November. If I've set all the Zoom things correctly, and I did do some screenshots and paste them in to AI to check, then you should already be registered for those. If you've got any suggestions for topics, you could type that into the chat now, or you could just email me at some point or find me on LinkedIn, and we will have a look at that. So the PowerPoint deck will be on the NewMR website in a couple of hours, or certainly 5 or 6 hours. So will the recording of this session, and those will be available. You'll get probably an email from Zoom in about 4 days saying it's up on the website as well. Yeah, it will be there later on today. Okay, there's a request for tips on Claude skills. One of the really interesting things is you can write a skill in ChatGPT and run it in Claude. You can write a skill in Claude and run it in ChatGPT. Skills are movable, not in every case, because if they use something that's unique to that platform, but if you write a data analysis skill in one of the LLMs, you can then run that in several of the others, and that's super impressive. And with that, thank you, everyone.